This afternoon, I definitely want to start talking about transition and how important that is to explore, especially for those as parents and caregivers of children with disabilities. People think, oh, my child's young, I have a ways to go, I don't have to worry about that now. But trust me, you definitely do. You need to start that preparation. So I'm kind of start that conversation. And of course, the rest of the afternoon, we'll kind of go into a little bit more of the legal ins and outs of what you need to know and your options of preparing for when your young one turns into an adult. So let me get started. I'm going to share my screen and go over my presentation on transition. So give me 1 second, please. Yeah, go ahead and do that. Get that started for you. Okay, well, during my role first as an adult education teacher, parents calling my classroom wanting information about their child. So that was my first eye opener, realizing that parents don't understand. When their child turns 18 and without written consent, I couldn't speak to them. I had many upset parents calling, asking, I want to know about my child's attendance. Are they showing up? How are their grades? How are they progressing? And I had to politely explain to them without written consent, I understand they live at your house. I understand they're still underneath your roof, underneath your rules, but again, they are an adult. So at that point, it got me to realize, again, early in my career, how important transition is, not just for the child that's still in school or deciding to turn into an adult, but also about the parents understanding how to transition themselves and their roles and what they need to know. So again, we have to start this whole process very early. Even with your typical children as well, those with special needs. So obviously when someone turns 18 in the eyes of the law, that's why adults are forced to make that change and take different approaches. So that's why in the school system, we actually start that process of transition at the age of 14. During those IEP meetings, we talk about, again, what their post-secondary options are, their rules, their goals and ambitions, and start that planning process. So during this next hour, we're going to talk about a little bit more about transition. I'm going to talk about some of my observations and challenges that I've experienced, as again, being an educator and also being as a parent myself, things that we had to kind of work through in that whole planning stage and process. We're going to discuss about engaging in self-advocacy and how important that is to teach our young ones, our children, how to advocate for themselves. Also identify areas to begin building independent living skills, providing tips to create meaningful social interactions, and also provide valuable resources for you. Now, I look at this cartoon, it's one that I just look at and I just can't help but smile and laugh because, again, think about, us here at this meeting today or in this webinar, and just think about, when you graduated high school, how did you feel? Again, just being if you're, neurotypical person, and then think about someone with special needs. Again, what am I going to do? Real life 101. Oh my God, where do I go? Where do I stay? What do I do about a career? What about where do I live? So again, how to navigate that. Look at this poor person, laying on the ground. Oh my gosh, real life 101. Now what do I do? So again, we have to start early and start exploring those options. I think about my own daughter who just turned 18 in March. It was like, of course, we did a big celebration, big birthday, but then we had to talk again, when she first had to make her first medical appointment herself, and what that process was like, and giving that insurance information and explaining all those things, how to do that process. I mean, it's just amazing how quickly that time flies and learning how to do that and teaching her. When thinking about transition, I want parents to consider when their child's still in school, I think about deferment. And let me explain what that actually is, what that means to folks. Obviously, when a student can actually stay into the local public school up to the school year before they turn 22 years of age. And during that time, if someone defers, they could actually stay in school and work on many things, such as life skills training. They could participate in dual enrollment programs, such as local vocational program, such as McFadder, Atlantic Tech, or Sheridan, or even the local college or Broward College, and take classes there as well. And then during that time, in high school, they could start that process of talking to vocational rehabilitation, determine if they'll need other supports, and help with their education to achieve their desired employment. If they qualify for voc rehab, what they can actually help them with is with evaluations, career assessments. What can I do? What am I interested in? Tuition, books, tutoring, assistive technology. I know we heard about that earlier today from our speech pathologist. They could also get those equipment, those things for them as well. So again, these are the type of things that definitely think about. When is it appropriate for them to remain in school and to get all the public education they can and training through the public school system, or is it time to move on and find post-secondary skills and education, or career to work type of program? So starting at age 14, students have what's called, like I mentioned before, an IEP. They then get turned into a transition IEP, discussing transition and the students' post-secondary desires and goals. When I used to ask my students when I was an ESC specialist back in the 90s, of course, many years ago, when I asked my male students that what they wanted to do after high school, what did you want to be? And of course, most of my males would say football players. Now to kind of look at them, I said, well, are you on the football team? Do you play in your local Optimists? No. So again, we had to kind of explore what kind of prerequisite skills would you need to be a football player. Same thing about the girls. Again, a lot of wanted to work in the beauty industry if I asked them back in the day, and what their desires were. We had to start exploring what skills they actually need to do those things. Again, is it realistic? Like, for example, again, when I was in school, math and chemistry was definitely not my thing, or my favorite subjects by any means. So definitely me going to the medical field would not be a good fit. So let me quickly tell you a story, a true story about a student that I had, Rudolph was his name. And again, back in the 90s, students that did not take the high school competency test, which now is the FCAT and the other required things they need to graduate from high school. Back then it was HSET. If they didn't take that, they had to be given an individualized assessment. And I was going to give him the Woodcock-Johnson assessment at that point. And Rudolph, and give some little history about him, he was the youngest of, I believe, 12 or 13 siblings. His mom had mental health issues, so I never actually met the mother. I just knew that from looking at his psychological and psychosocial documentation that were in his folder. I did meet, I think, the father once that he came to school throughout his high school career, actually when he got into trouble during his freshman year. But anyways, when I went to actually give him the reading section of the Woodcock-Johnson, he just kind of politely looked at me and says, "Miss, I don't know why you're giving me this test. I can't read." Well, besides, having my heart, sink at that point, and I was like, what do you say to this young man? So I quickly, just looked at him and said, Rudolph, that's okay. And something, I can't do video taping like you do. He was a third year student in TV production. And he was in charge every morning of the morning announcements, and he did all kinds of creations for videography. And he was fabulous at it. And so I said, what? So it's okay. But then I thought for a second. I looked at him and I said, I have a project for you that you can really help me with. And again, back in the 90s, inclusion really wasn't, as well developed, or I could say, as it is now, as far as making sure that children that were going for regular diploma or had access to the general education setting, they were just starting to work that process out with IDA. And I was working on a whole inclusion program, sport facilitation in my school. And I said, I really need your help with creating a video. Would you be interested in doing that for me? And you know what? He did. His eyes lit up. He got all excited. He forgot about that test we had to finish getting through. And he says, what? I'll be happy to help you. Well, you know, that video that he created was so amazing. I presented it not only at my school, but also in the district level. It was, you know, it was phenomenal. And now let me tell you about Rudolph. Years later, I find out, well, I didn't know at the time, he did get a full scholarship to vocational school for his trade. And last I heard that he was actually relocated to Canada and was working in that field, doing very well for himself. So, you know, again, what is his skill level? What was it, his interest? What was his abilities? So all the things we talked about when we planned on his transition. And I definitely believed in him. I knew that he was going to do well in life, which was fabulous for him. And then also, but teaching him the fact that, okay, if I couldn't read past the third grade level, but what can I do to help understand the material? You know, we talked about other accommodations that he would need and use before he left high school. That's what you need at 504 accommodation. We'll talk more about that later on in the presentation. And understanding what that process looks like. So we're fortunate in Broward to have 3 major technical schools with a wide range of vocational programs. Students can explore these programs while still in high school through dual enrollment. Students quite often will either go to the technical school in the morning and learn their trade at that point, and then then be transported by transportation back to the high school program for their academics, or vice versa. So again, those are certain criteria. Each program has their own, you know, certain criteria as far as what level they need to be on academically, what their GPA needs to be, and those type of things. But definitely, if you're interested in that, when your child comes to that age, definitely explore that with your EOC specialist, and there's a whole application process to do so. Now, here's some of the actual transition challenges that are definitely faced. And some transition challenges can be overwhelming, obviously, to start working on life skills, so they can do that early on, especially independent living skills. Again, can they make a meal for themselves as part of independent living skills? You know, can they, you know, are they able to shower and brush their teeth without prompts or reminders? Can they manage their own sleep hygiene, not being up all night on their iPad or Xbox or watching Netflix? How do they socialize and meet new people? Many students have been usually with the same peer group in the school system year after year and for years, so that's all they really know. So again, how do you interact and meet new people? Does your child know and understand their unique needs? You know, when I was a director at College Living Experience, again, this is a for-profit organization that helped students with their post-secondary education and job skills and living independently. And I'll never forget, I had a young man from Louisiana. He was 19 years old, and I never forget, he came into my office and said, you know, I think I might be Asperger's. I said, excuse me? I said, yeah, because I was just wondering. I was reading about it. I think that might be what I have. I said, to him, you know, as calmly as I could be, I said, do you know why you're here, and you know, why, you know, what our program's about, and you know, about your eligibility to be involved in our program? He says, no, I was never told. I was beyond dumbfounded that he had no idea what his diagnosis was, what it meant to him. So that really, really surprised me. So again, that whole process of understanding and how to advocate for himself and knowing how and why, what his needs are, you know, he was kept in the dark. His mom was an educator herself, and I guess she worked at the school where he attended, and she kind of was like a helicopter mom and behind the scenes kind of drove the train for him. But here he was, you know, another state on his own and not understanding really what his unique needs were exactly, and understanding why and how to overcome them. So fortunately, I had a great psychologist that worked for me, part of my staff, and together we kind of helped him understand and navigate, you know, understanding his uniqueness and how he could strive. So it was definitely something that was an eye-opener for me, not realizing, wow, yeah, I just assumed that, you know, all the young adults in my program would know why they were there, especially if the program is just geared for young adults with special needs, to give them post-secondary education and life skills. So some of the transition challenges, though, again, besides those things, is again, missing natural supports from home. Oh, excuse me. Like I said, a lot of times, you know, as parents, it's, it's kind of rote and routine. We're nurturers. We want to make sure our child's safe and we take care of them. And we, automatically do a lot of things for them. But again, we're giving them the skills so they can do things independently if they're able to. And also have them disclose and get their accommodations that they need. And be able to raise their hand and speak up for themselves. So this is what the big difference is and why this is so important. In the public school system, think about this through IDA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act that Martin mentioned earlier. Again, that covers ages 3 to 21. And that's when, you're entitled. By law, you're protected to have your needs met in the school system. Excuse me. And then, of course, after that, there's, of course, the American Disability Act, which you fall under after age 21, and people are protected through all stages in life through that. So the really difference is, if you look at the charts I have here, again, high school, you're entitled for those supports. You have a legal claim to receive those things. Then in college, you have to be eligible for those supports. You have to ask for them. Excuse me. So again, it'd be post-secondary education usually has a Office of Disabilities, and they have their own criteria to show documentation proof that you have an eligibility, that you need special accommodations, and what those may be in special certain conditions. There's some also important reminders to think about. Again, there's no IEPs in post-secondary education. Students are responsible for providing documentation of and disclosing disability to be eligible for accommodations, regularly advocating for their needs throughout the term. This level of advocacy will extend beyond the classroom into the student's home and community. I love this chart here. It's a kind of little overview of what I've gone over, but it's really a great way to show the difference between actually entitlement with the IDA versus the eligibility of the American Disability Act and 504 plan. Again, let me look over again what happens during when they're in the public school or in the school system, so to speak. Again, it covers them. I hear K through 12. It's actually pre-K through 12. So I apologize for that error on there. Again, they get a free and appropriate public education in the least restricted environment guaranteed to students. Students must identify. School must identify students with a disability. Again, they have to be eligible first to have an actual, to see if they qualify for an individual educational plan that's created. And the school is responsible for testing and evaluating students with disabilities. Now, again, on the other side of that, you see the American Disabilities and the Section 504 eligibility. Again, covers students in the post-secondary education, but also student in the public school can have a 504 plan as well. So let's say they have a medical condition, but they don't really need special education services, but maybe just accommodations. So they might just need just a 504 plan for that. So that's a difference as well to keep in mind. There's also equal access is granted to students who must be otherwise qualified to enter college without considerations of disability. Student must identify to disability services provider. Again, they're not minors, they're not going to know. You have to kind of self-disclose. Again, I think about a time when I taught adult education as well, I had a young man that was actually court ordered to attend my class. And he tried to do whatever he could to beat the system of not wanting to come and spend time. And after a little while, after working with him, and I said to him, look, you have to show up. I'm not going to lie for you. You have to be here 2 hours or your probation officer is going to find out. And he's going to know about it. Well, after a time of trust and us spending time together during his classwork and doing over his math assignments, it dawned on me that he was having some issues with some of the math skills and comprehension, and I pulled him to a side and kind of said, were you ever identified of having a learning disability in the school? And he said, how did you know? Who told you? I said, honestly, nobody did. I said, but I'm a special education teacher. And I said, you never did share that. I said, you don't have to, you didn't have to tell me that. I said, but it'd been nice to, so I could help you and work with you through your skills and so I could, work with your challenges and help you pass this course. So to make a long story short, we ended up having a great relationship after a rocky start. Of having him wanting to buck the system, not be there, and having to get that trust with me. But he ended up getting his GED and making it through and get on the right track, luckily. But again, he did not disclose, and I got him to at least be able to do so again, luckily. And then entitlement versus eligibility was, again, a continuation of what this actually means to. During the IEP, during the IDA, IEP teams determine necessary supports, as well as modifications to curriculum students will need. Classroom teachers receive a copy of IEP and have a thorough understanding of students' disabilities. Teachers and parents advocate for academic needs of students. And then, of course, on the other side of the coin here, again, we look at section 504. Here, it's actually, notice the difference. Of course, IEP teams to get those supports here, the students responsible to meet with a disability service to provide, to discuss needs and accommodations at that time. So again, accommodations to access the same materials everybody else gets, but again, there will not be modifications to the curriculum in the post-secondary world. Also, again, the professor will be provided with official notice from the disability service provider regarding students' needs for accommodations. No diagnosis data is included unless provided by the student. So again, that is confidential. And the student advocates for their own academic needs at that point as well. Now, preparing for transition. In terms of advocacy, first of all, I want to understand what it means, which really is speaking up for oneself and one's interests. It's used as a name for civil rights movements as well as mutual aid networks for people with special needs, which is really what the opposite of what my daughter used to call me. Mom, you're just always being a helicopter mom. Well, obviously you can't be a helicopter mom once they hit 18, because again, you can't get in there and speak to a guidance counselor. You can't talk to the academic advisors or the teachers at that point. So they have to self-advocate for themselves. Which is again, big change. So again, at an early age, I had to actually teach my own child how to start advocating for herself, knowing that when she turns 18 or goes off to college or whatever she plans on doing, that I can't be that helicopter mom. So again, when she had any issues with one of her teachers not following her 504 plan or accommodation, instead of me immediately emailing or calling, when she expressed a concern with me, I'd say, well, what do you need to do to handle that? What do you think you could do? And I'm trying to ask her a question, advise her, and let her handle it. Again, if it's emailing her teacher herself, or if she didn't feel comfortable talking to them. But again, it's having her, learn how to go about that, knowing how important it is for her to advocate for herself, again, because she is getting older, and I know I can't always be that helicopter mom, so to speak, when she's, becomes an adult. Also, another areas we need to talk about besides self-advocacy is independent living skills. And what does that mean? Again, we look at someone's personal hygiene. Could be, again, are they wearing clean clothes? Are they using deodorant and showering and dressing, taking care of their clothing properly? Are they taking care of their health needs and health care? Are they eating a well-balanced meal or nutritious balanced meals? And are they able to remind themselves to eat, or are they not overeating or eating junk? Home management and home safety. Again, are they aware of making sure the doors are locked, or not giving personal information to a stranger, social security number, their date of birth, those type of things that people need to make sure that they're not giving out to strangers. So again, there's independent living skills, how to access their community. You're going to hear later from Danielle McGill about transportation. Again, how to safely navigate their environment using different modes of transportation and being with someone with special needs. And last, talk about social connections. Again, meeting new people and making friends, how to take turns in conversation, keep to a topic and listen to the person. Now, self-advocacy. What is it? Expressing your needs and wants, like we discussed a few minutes ago. Discussing how you learn best, your strengths and challenges, knowing your rights and responsibilities, and reaching out to others for support and asking for help. And why is it so important so students can plan and participate in decisions that are affecting their life? I mean, that's the bottom line, right? It's really them themselves. It's really important. and how to teach these self-advocacy skills. Again, facilitate discussion about their students' goals in their post-secondary plan. Encourage active participation in students' transition IEPs. Again, they should be in attendance. Some parents, again, whatever reason, might feel they don't want to worry about them, feeling down about themselves, worry about their self-esteem, or I don't want them to know. It's not that important. They're going to miss out on their class. That we're pulling them out of. There's all kinds of reasons why sometimes the parents don't want the child, the student to actually be there. But it's really important that they are. Again, help students understand the difference between high school and college, eligibility versus entitlement. Discuss when and why it may be appropriate to disclose a disability and how to speak about it, their strengths, needs, and etc. Assist students understand their psychoeducational evaluation and their accommodations. I just want to share another story with you, how important this is. It got me thinking about the time also when I was AC specialist at a high school. I also played a very large role with our student athletes. For some reason, I think half of our football team was one of my students with unique needs. So I kind of took them all on as being like the football mom, I guess you want to they used to call me. And I worked with recruiters, got to know them very well. And one of my students actually got a 4-ride to Western Kentucky. So make a long story short, well, after a few weeks from starting practice in Kentucky, the student called me after school, very upset. Oh, miss, I need your help. I can't do this. All the coach does is yell at me and scream. I can't get this playbook. Man, it's so big. I can't do this. I don't know what to do. I hate it. He was so upset. So I listened to a while, let him carry on, and he's like, I just don't know what to do. All he does is yell. And this young man had a language learning disability. Obviously more that he's talking at him and yelling at him. Of course, he's shutting down, tuning them out. Reading this huge playbook, there's just no way he's going to get, understand and read all this material. That's not how he learns. But, so after I calmed him down, I just spoke to him, about himself. I said, well, how can you handle this? I said, I'm not there. And so you have to advocate yourself. What's best what do you need from your coach to help you get your playbook? What do you need help with? So we talked about those things, about what does he need? What are his, how could he help him? Having that conversation with him, we talked about his learning styles and being a visual learner. And those type of things. And then ironically, not the next day, I guess before they had this conversation with his coach, that coach called me. Oh, I need your help. I don't know what to do. He's not getting it. He's not getting his plays. I'm frustrated. He's not talking to me. So ironically, the two of them were frustrated with each other. So again, I nicely said to him, look, coach, I'm sorry to hear that, but I really think you need to have a conversation with him and talk about it. And I think he'll have some great suggestions for you. Because I didn't want to be the one to get in the middle, be that helicopter mom, to get, so to speak, and fix it for them. Well, fast forward, luckily, the two of them did have a conversation and they were able to make it through. They learned how to, learn from each other. He was able to teach him his plays, showing him, visuals and showing him small chunks at a time. And fast forward now, which is also a really cool story to share, the same individual, the same student I'm talking about. I think it's about 2013 or so, I got a call. And somehow he found me on LinkedIn and tracked me down, the same student, to just say that somehow looked me up and said, I just have to thank you and tell you where I am now. Make a long story short, he ended up getting his master's degree, working as a therapist. Now has, married, has a child, and is doing so well. And I said, if it wasn't for you, I would have never gotten this far. Because first of all, I've never made it to college. And I would have failed out if I got there if it wasn't you, helping, guide me and teaching me how to advocate for myself and to be responsible, which was really neat to hear. But I said, no, I said, you did it yourself. I said, yes, I gave you the tools, but you took them and used them. So again, teaching those skills, which is so important. Again, what are their choices? What resource supports are available? After making a choice, why was it? Why did you choose that? And evaluate, was it the right decision? So these are things we talked about. Yeah, independent living part 1. Okay, let's talk about what is this? Again, I know I talked about a lot of these things earlier, right? We addressed them a little bit, but this again is just so important. You don't think about this sometimes. And, you know, some people, it's not important for them, their hygiene or self-care and diet. And that's something that's learned behavior. And I know you had Jillian earlier today talking about behavior. And again, this starts young. And it's, you know, it's hard to change behavior if you're not used to it, and doing these things on your own. Again, having a routine of, you know, when you're bathing, when you're brushing your teeth, and doing your own self-care. Excuse me. Again, teach them how you pay their own bills and living within a budget. It's a tough one for even typical youngsters. I'm thinking about my own child again, who just turned 18 and has a car, and you know, she had unfortunately had an accident, and I made her pay her own deductible. And she's working. I said, "Oh, I have to pay how much?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Guess what? It's coming out of your account. Now what are you gonna do?" And you have to still pay gas and whatnot. So she had to figure out how to pull back in the budget. Again, maintaining cleanliness and order in your home. Some of them, again, you know, do they know how to clean? I know it sounds silly, but you know, that's a skill that people have to learn. You know, washing dishes properly, or hanging up their clothes and putting them away. Manage their medical and dental needs. If you're always taking out your child's medicine, putting it out in front of them, you know, what if they, you know, if you're not there, how are they going to know to do that on their own, or how to do it? Again, navigating around their community, their environment. So why it's important, again, is you want to maximize participation in one's life in a way that stretches oneself, extends skills beyond the supports previously provided by, again, the family, and creates community connections, which is so important. You know, I think about the pandemic, when we were kind of like, I think we're shut down, we're stuck in our home, and there was not much community, you know, interaction and togetherness, so to speak, and it was hard. To imagine for those that don't know how to navigate and are kind of stuck in their own shell, what they must feel like. Let's talk about part 2 of this as well. Here are 3 skills students should know and begin building before leaving home. Being on time and prepared. Again, how to do that. You know, is it putting alarms on their phone? Is it using a list of again, on their phone, or on a sheet of paper, a checklist, you know, all the materials they need. You know, securing an area where to put those things so I don't forget them when I walk out the door. Again, keeping a hygiene routine. Again, they need that picture strip of, again, of what steps they need to take. You know, showering, you know, toweling, drying off, brushing their teeth, you know, doing their hair, whatever those steps are that people take, and you know, within their own environment, what that looks like. I mean, it's funny. I think about my own self growing up. You know, my dad was the last one out of the house when I was younger to get me out the door. And again, being a, you know, man's man, he wasn't going to be making sure a little girl's getting dressed and getting her clothes out, those type of things. So the night before was routine, which I do to this day. The night before I go to bed, my clothes are out for the next day. I got my shoes out, my lunches are made. So everything is done. So when I get up that morning, there's actually no fuss, no muss. It's right there ready for me. I knew what steps I need to take. Again, that's the kind of routine that, you know, I personally learned in a grown up. Again, same thing about, you know, waking up in the morning. Some people are really bad about this, especially if they're all up late at night, you know, playing video games or whatnot, or playing on their computer or watching TV. Excuse me. And if you can wake up, good some ideas would be maybe clearing the nightstand of distractions, cell phones, computers, something that could tempt you to stay awake at night. Again, set the alarm clock, wake up, and consider setting up even sometimes 2 alarm clocks, or having those alarm clocks so you have to actually physically get up off the bed to actually turn it off. Instead of just hitting the snooze, right? If you have to physically move to turn it off, you know, you're more likely to stay awake and get up. Or again, checking your calendar to see what time you need to wake up or leave. Enter the wake up time onto your clock. Again, make sure you're selecting AM or PM. These are things that people forget about, or you know, make a mistake and not, or set the wrong one. day versus night, AM or PM. Double check that the time is accurate. Ensure that the volume is set high enough so you can actually hear it. And then, which I always say, you know, a good idea is making sure that alarm clock might be about 5 feet away from your bed. Again, forcing you to get up, and rather than just hitting that snooze like I mentioned a minute ago. I know I just talked about this preparing for the day, which I think is so important to do this ahead of time. Gather all pertinent materials the night before. Determine a place in the home where essential items are stored. Again, where your backpacks, keys, phones, wallet. I know sometimes I'll even do the night before. I'll put those things in the car or whatever I need, my bag that I need the next day or whatnot. So again, it's all there together, organized. So again, I'm not forgetting something. Create a timeline of how long it will take you from waking up to getting to your job or class. Again, what does that look like, that walk? You know, have you made enough time to get from A to B? Time, think about traffic, think about the time of day it is, or if it's, getting that bus, and if it, you don't have time to get on to get your bus pass, those type of things. Personal care, identify what tasks should be completed and when. Create a list of visual tasks of each, a visual schedule of each task. Use a task analysis or watch or video if you're unclear. And I think everybody nowadays, I swear, just uses YouTube to figure out everything. It's amazing what people learn nowadays. So again, it's just, plug in your little Google search and get that video, and you learn how to, again, get those tasks shown for you and worked out. Create morning and evening routines to cover all necessary items. Cooking. Again, it's just things that sometimes some people take advantage of realizing that some people just don't. Again, start slow with just one meal. Research any easy recipes that are small lists of ingredients. Create a shopping list and a budget. Shop for groceries. These are things that I would do with my students at College and Experience. I mean, they didn't realize, again, if you want to cook something, some macaroni and cheese, for example, or by scratch, and they don't have, milk to add in or whatever the ingredient is, that they can't make it, right? So again, make sure they have all the ingredients that shopping list, what you're doing. Start small. It's just a sandwich. Set realistic goals. Again, skills needed, time needed, and ingredients. And if you have the right tools as far as utensils, do you have a measuring cup that you might need, or the correct baking pan or sheet or frying pan? And here, I think I mentioned a little bit briefly before about social connections. And again, think about all we learned during the pandemic and how important social connections were and are for us. We learned during the shutdown starting mid-March in South Florida, we've shown such a huge increased number of domestic violence cases, increased number of people seeking help for depression and drug and alcohol abuse actually skyrocketed. People are just natural social beings. I still find it difficult when I see now a friendly face, and I wanted to go over and shake their hand or give them a hug, and know that we really can't because of social distancing still, because of the pandemic. I mean, it's very difficult. So again, how important that is for us, those social connections. Also during the transition process, we have to teach our loved ones the difference on setting appropriate boundaries. When is it appropriate to talk about personal family matters or personal matters, and to whom? Would not be obviously to go to a job interview and let them, tell the person you never met before about, your sibling who just got dumped by their girlfriend, for example. I mean, obviously that's not an appropriate conversation to have, but again, some people don't know and understand that. So what are appropriate boundaries, and what are appropriate conversations you have, and with who? So what are social connections? Again, understanding, communicating effectively with our verbal and non-verbal cues, understanding levels of friendships and basics of maintaining healthy relationships, using your interests and passions to drive community connections. Again, why it's important? Because we want to build meaningful engagement with others and allow the core connections to community and workplace. Social connections as well. Discuss the rules of communication, which I just mentioned briefly. Discuss the upcoming social changes that will be happening. And even, dating, or, that's another scary topic to discuss. Demonstrating and aid student in planning their own activities. Encourage overnight activities, sleepaway camps, or times away from parents while student is at home. establish social goals within the home or community, and utilize community resource to expose students to new social activities. I know that we have a list of Q&As. I'm going to go through those just if you have any questions at all. I know I went over a lot of things really quickly, but I wanted to leave time to go over some questions, and also remind you all that we do have a phenomenal resource list on our website and storckcenter.org, Hot Topic Seminar. So please make sure that you go on there. I have a lot of great resources on different transition resources out there in the community, from 2-in-1 4 hour to the various post-secondary educational programs. So definitely take a look at that